Welcome, everybody, to the Bully Resistance Show. My name is David Wells. You know, I've had many people on the road and actually on social media ask me how they can help bring awareness and help me fight against bullying in the public schools. And, you know, one of the ways that you can do that, you can actually go to www.davebond.org, and you can click on and if you scroll down, you can actually click on the Patreon logo, and you can support the foundation and me going into the public schools as low as $4 a month. And in doing, or actually in becoming a sponsor or being a monthly supporter, we'll be emailing everyone the track of the week or the CD of the month, depending on the sponsorship levels. But also, you can actually subscribe to the Bully Resistance Show. If you haven't done so now, just you can actually click on the banner on the website on the front page that says subscribe to the Bully Resistance Show. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Nathan Alfred Insurance. It's an independent insurance agency located in Vienna, West Virginia. They specialize in auto, home, life, and business insurance. And also what actually makes the agency unique is their ability to shop the market for you. Also, the Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Planet Fitness. Come out and check out the new and improved Planet Fitness. They have all new strength equipment, tanning beds, rowing machines, and more. You can actually become a member just starting at $10 a month. Just go to planetfitness.com for more information.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells, nationally known smooth jazz artist, CEO and co-founder of the Chocolate Jazz Foundation, and the co-host of a 2-hour syndicated radio program called Chocolate Jazz Radio. Bully Resistance is a weekly 1-hour show that's a motivational, informative, and inspirational program. We will have interviews with musicians, actors, government officials, politicians, psychologists, counselors, and just average day citizens. Of course, the topics will include making the right choices, never giving up desire, discipline, determination, bullying in public school, the workplace, and in your community, bully resistance and prevention, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and current affairs, and much, much more. And if you're ready, we are. Here's your host, David Wells.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. My name is David, and today we have a special guest from Colorado. He has over 25 number one radio singles and multiple Grammy nominations over the past 11 years as an artist, a producer, and mixing engineer. And he's also worked with Toby Keith, Jonathan Butler, Najee, Bob James, Kirk Whalum, Jeffrey Osborne, Phil Perry, Jeff Lorber, Norman Brown, and just many, many more over the years. So at this time, I want to introduce Darren Rahan on the Bully Resistance Show. Darren, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
So, Darren, before we get started, can you just give us just a little bit more background of yourself? I mean, where you were born and raised, and then actually how you got started into the music career.
Sure. I was born and raised in British Columbia, Canada. Small farming community. It was. I guess you could say I was a country boy. And early years of my life we spent there on the farm. Music was always an integral part of our family. We had a church group. My mom and dad were a part of a music group at church that actually traveled to all different churches and did gospel music, and they had us kids involved. And so we kind of started at an early age, but nothing professionally, just we had a big passion for music. And then in I'd say high school, really, that love for music just took a deep root, and I knew I wanted to do it full time.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, from Canada, there's a lot of artists, especially in the smooth jazz genre, that are from Canada. Warren Hill, isn't he from Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you? I mean, I'm sure that you've worked with him before.
Yeah, I know Warren. He's a great guy, super talented, and love his playing. Okay,
so let me ask you this. So you currently live in, is it Denver, Colorado?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, did you ever live in California?
I did. When we moved away from the farm in Canada to the metropolis of San Diego, when I was, that must have been around 4th grade, I think. And,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a vast, vast difference. I mean, both culturally and geographically. But it was amazing. I mean, that was San Diego in what was that? Kind of the end of the 70s, early 80s. It was kind of it was paradise, man. We spent our summers at the beach, and if we weren't in school, we were outside playing. And but that's where music really started. We had done, when I was young, Mom had made us take a few years of piano lessons, us kids, and then she said, you have to do 2 years of piano. If you don't like it, you can quit. But I at least want to have that musical foundation laid. And so she did that for 2 years, and both my twin brother and I quit. But then when it came time to join band, we wanted to join, and it was easy then because we were already reading music, and, we were used to reading, treble clef and bass clef on piano. So being on an instrument, just playing one note at a time was a breeze.
So in high school, you had the love of music, and then you knew in high school also that you really wanted a career in music. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Now, with myself as a trumpet player, nothing really came easy. I always had to practice extra harder than most musicians, everything else. Now, did playing the sax come easy for you, or did you have to practice and take the lessons and everything else?
I practiced a lot. It's hard to say when you talk about things coming naturally. I mean, I know there are some artists that are so disgustingly gifted. Anything they hear, they can play, and kind of that's not the way it was for me. For me, I had a deep-seated passion for music. And so I just practiced really hard early on. I mean, I put a lot of hours in, even as a young kid, on saxophone. And I started on clarinet, moved to saxophone, and it just, by the time I was in high school, I was probably on my horn 2 to 4 hours a day, maybe 5. And then by college, including my classes and performing groups, I was probably 8-9 hours a day in my college years.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. So going from a instrumentalist, like a sax player, going into producing, how old were you, or when was your first break as getting your first project to produce a CD?
Well, I had been working on my own music, and really the production thing, this was not something that was part of my plan. I guess God had other plans for me to do both, but I never planned it. I just got to a point where I wanted to get my own music out there, and I tried working with some people, and you know the story. They overcharge, underdeliver, or not give you the results you want. And so I figured, well, I guess if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to figure it out. So I started just working on my own music. And then a few friends heard it. I had a friend, a singer named Shauna Chanda, who great singer. She does pop music and some contemporary Christian stuff. And she heard my stuff and said, I'd like you to do something for me. So I did her project, and then other friends started calling, and then Nelson Rangel called, and I did a few songs for him early on in my production career. And then
he's an awesome player.
He's fantastic. Yeah. And then maybe, I don't know, after a handful of years, 5 or 10 years, not probably 10 or 12 years of doing that, just people coming to me saying, I like your music, can I hire you? I wasn't a commercial studio. I wasn't really pursuing production jobs. They were just coming to me, and all the while I was still playing saxophone and building kind of my artist thing. And then in the early 2000s, I think it was 2003, through a series of pretty incredible circumstances, I got connected to Wayman Tisdale, and it kind of started. It started with being rejected for a record deal. That's how the whole thing started. They said, "Hey, we love your music, but we already have some young artists, and we don't have any more room on our label. But your stuff sounds great. If we had some production work, would you take it?" And I thought, well, okay. And little did I know that night they overnighted my album to the album that they turned down. They overnighted it to Wayman Tisdale, and he called him and said, "I want this guy to produce my next single." So,
wow!
A few days later, I'm in the office with Wayman. He's shaking my hand, and 9 weeks later, Ain't No Stopping Us Now is number one on Billboard. So it was pretty incredible.
That's amazing. You know, I have actually I spend a lot of time in public schools, and I really focus on bullying, and I talk about the importance of making right choices.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, bullies are people that have low self-esteem, or they don't think they can do certain things well, or they don't think they can do anything well. So what they'll do, they'll go ahead and pick on somebody usually smaller than themselves. And one of my initiatives or objections when I go into school is to really to build their self-esteem, to, you know, get them excited to start dreaming about what they want to be. Because the mentality, Darren, the mentality that I see so much, especially just not in kids. I mean, even talking to adults, they have never pursued their dream. They don't know. They don't have a dream. And, you know, and since we're talking about, you know, religion, and you were raised in church, and of course I was too, you know, one of the things, if God has really placed a purpose or a dream in you, we just have to trust that He's given us all the proper tools to make it happen at His time, you know. But that being said, why do you think personally people don't pursue their dreams? Is it because of, failure, or is it low self-esteem?
I think it's fear. Probably a lot of the same things that are rooted in. I'm not saying people who don't pursue their dreams are bullies, but maybe some of the roots between these two things are similar. I think fear is the number one thing. I mean, it takes a lot of guts. I was in college, and you know, I had done my master's degree, and I was a year into my doctorate when I was like, you know, I want to do music. I don't want to be stuck in a room 8 hours a day teaching scales to kids that don't want to practice. And no offense, there are some people like my wife, Priscilla, her gift is teaching, and she's unbelievable. I mean, a career teacher, but that wasn't my path. And so I just felt like I needed to take a chance at this, and it was a big risk. I mean, the sacrifice involved was huge. I've been self-employed for, what is it now, 25 years or more. And you know, there's no built-in pension or retirement plan or health care or the things that we are so comfortable with in life here in North America. So anyway, I think risk is the big reason people don't take a stab at it. And yeah, as we get into the bully thing too, I'll be able to share how that can even relates to what music was for me.
Yeah, that sounds good. But let me ask you another question. You know, a lot of us we go through a lot of ups and downs. You know, there's one saying that I say it's no matter how many times, and you've heard this, and it may be different words or saying, but no matter how many times we get knocked down, we always have to get back up. And so, was there ever a time, and I'm really talking more about your career in producing, or it could be in playing the sax. Was there ever a time where it was not going as well as you thought, where things were just splintering off, and you got frustrated, and you're thinking, okay, well, maybe this is not what I need to do? I mean, was there ever a time in your life that you wanted to quit?
Sure. I mean, I think, like you said, that notion of, you know, not quitting, I mean, that's the answer to it. But I think every musician almost every musician deals with that. There are a few. I've met some musicians that their career has been pretty much a storybook from day one, but that's not the norm. Most musicians I know have hit that point multiple times, and I think, I don't think there's any way around that. The key to being great as a musician, as a saxophone player or as an artist, or any career is you continue to work hard and get better, you improve, and when you fall down, you get back up.
Well, you know, I forgot to ask you this question because a few weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, I saw a post where Dave Koz was actually in your studio. And I don't know if that was the first time you ever worked with him, but let me ask you this. When you deal with an artist like him, who's extremely busy, you know, he needs to probably come in do his thing. How do you work with an artist like him, or how did you work with him as an artist? Did he come in and you had all the tracks prepared and he just laid his part, or did he just come in to listen to what you have, or what was that all about?
Every artist is different, and just to preface it, that, when I told the story about the record label and Wayman Tisdale and getting asked to produce, that was actually Dave Kozz's record label. So I had gone through like 12 years of just banging so hard in the music industry and working, and like I was working myself like crazy, and almost to no avail, it seemed. And then all of a sudden this door opened, and Dave Koz, he was actually the connection on that. I had sent my music to some labels, and a couple days later I got a phone call from Dave Koz. And so he and I, at that point, that I don't know, it was maybe 2003, 2002, and we became friends, and we've stayed in touch ever since. I've produced a number of songs for him over the years. One of the number ones I produced was his "Life in the Fast Lane" from his greatest hits album. And so
I didn't know that.
He and I had done a number of songs, probably 4 or 5 songs over the last 10, 15 years, and then he came to me this I guess early this year, and asked if I would produce his new Christmas album. And so that's how that all came about. So it wasn't like an instant, Dave Koz is in the studio. We had, over 15 years, I'd worked for several artists that were on his label, and then he and I had done several songs together. So like everything else, it's, the building of a relationship, the building of trust between, two people when they work together. So when he asked me to do that, he was just getting ready to go out on his cruise. He does the 2 different weeks. And so there was about a month of prep ahead of that, that he was deeply involved in, and he was on the cruise for a couple weeks, and then he was overseas for another few weeks. So the first 2 months of the project, we didn't even see each other, and we didn't even have time to communicate. We just briefly talked about the concept of the album, and he and his team just let me go. And when he came back, I had 10 songs ready for him, and he
no pressure.
No pressure. No, but I'd worked with him before, so there's kind of a trust between us. But I mean, it was quite an undertaking. You're talking about 10 songs blind, and he picked 9 of those 10. So we only that was amazing. I was so grateful.
Wow.
And so we added one other song idea that he had, and then he had a beautiful song that he had already written that we were going to do. So by the time he came to my studio, these tracks were virtually finished. I mean, the time we had between when he got back from overseas and when he came here to record, there was about a month in there. So we spent a little bit of time on the phone talking back and forth about tracks and ideas and making sure everything was moving in a direction that really worked for him.
Awesome.
And so when he got here, it was 11 tracks in 3 days. It was insane. I've done some tight schedules in my career, but I think that's the record. 11 songs in 3 days. And Dave himself, he said, he told me he had never, he's sat down and done things quickly before, but he'd never done 11 songs in 3 days before. And I will say, this is the thing, as you talk about work ethic, as you talk about success, and I'll just say this, Dave is one of the hardest working musicians I have ever met. This guy is so incredible. He's so devoted to this. It's not just, I mean, yes, he is gifted. Yes, his ear is amazing. His playing is amazing. But it's not just that. He truly is one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And so, we went to the grind and got his parts done in 3 days. And when I say got them done in 3 days, we're not talking about, whipping through track by track. I mean, we sat down and really gave a lot of attention to each song, and he just played his butt off. And he sounds fantastic. I can't wait for you guys to hear him.
Well, I can't either. I mean, there's a guy, Aaron Clubb, and myself. Of course, he's the producer of this the Chocolate Jazz radio show, and I'm telling you, Darren, Aaron is a huge fan. Of course, I am too. But Aaron is a huge fan of your music and what you produce. He just whatever you put together, mixed down, is just what he wants to hear, and that's awesome. He's so critical. Wow. You're right about Dave. He is truly successful. Let me ask you this: so, what's your definition of success then, Darren?
I think for me,
is it relationships, money?
For me, success is being able to, support your family doing what you love to do, using your gift. So, I mean, we, as producers and I'm a sax player, producer, everyone, they have their own idea of what that means. But as well as I do that laying the foundation to work on any musical project, you've got phone calls and contracts and business details and negotiations and, all of the terms of everything. So the actual time we work on music, like if we take the music versus the business, I mean, we're probably lucky if we're doing music 50% of the time, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of groundwork that goes into it. But I think success is being able to use your gift, to provide for your family. And the other part of that to me is you said the word relationships. It's all about relationships for me.
Right.
It's not enticing to me to just go find the next a musician that I think can do a good single and record. It's the other way around. I prefer to develop relationships with people, right, and then let the music flow out of that.
Darren, right now, let me what I want to do, I want to go ahead and just change directions and talk a little bit about bullying in the public schools. And bullying it's what we're finding out. Bullying is just not in the public schools, but it's everywhere you turn. It's like it's in the communities. It's in the music business. Matter of fact, Darren, maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, I was had a friend that works as an employee at a nursing home in Pittsburgh, and we were having lunch and we were talking, and he said, "Listen, I got to go." I said, "What's up?" He goes, "Well, we have a bullying program for the nursing home."
Wow.
And I'm thinking, wow, man. Because I hear these things. Yeah. And so I'm thinking, my first thought is, well, obviously the staff is bullying these residents. And and I asked him, he goes, "No, we have residents bullying other residents."
Oh my goodness.
And it's getting out of hand. So it's one of those things. But let me ask you this. What was going to school like for you? I mean, did you ever get bullied, or did you see anyone get bullied?
I was growing up, I was almost 2 years younger than everyone in my class. So my twin brother and I, we started grade school early, and so our whole academic career, we were maybe a year and a half younger than everyone in our grade. And so we were always smaller. We were always shorter, smaller, weaker, and not, I mean, had we been placed a class or two back where we probably would have naturally entered school, that wouldn't have happened. But for us, it was kind of a constant battle. Of course, we grew up as the smallest kids in the class, being bullied from grade school all the way through high school. I remember it distinctly, and I think for me, the turning point was music. Finding an outlet to find peace and joy and happiness and significance. Right. We had in grade school, we had, of course, in San Diego, we grew up in the hood. I mean the hood, like literally. People have this vision of, they'll look at someone and think, okay, I can kind of see what their path in life has been. But for me, grade school was in the hood in a certain area of San Diego, and I mean rough. Severe drug problems and gang problems, and so my brother and I were the victims of a lot of those gangs. But I will say this: we'd also always had a deep-seated faith. So this is not something that I know everyone shares, but for us, our faith in God is what carried us through. And I mean, in the oddest circumstance, there was a kid on our junior high. I don't know his name. He was huge. I have no idea his name. I don't know. I don't even know if he was a student. Maybe he was an angel. I don't know who this kid was. But somehow, every time, and I mean every single time, that these gang members were going to come pounce, this guy showed up. I don't know how or why. I mean, personally, I think there probably was a bit of divine intervention there, but the bottom line is he did. I mean,
Sure.
God did protect us. I mean, that doesn't mean we never got bullied or beat up, and I mean, those things happen, but by and large, I think God looked over us. But in all of that, I thought a lot about the heart of bullying, because even going into high school, there was one fella in particular in my class that was just horrible to me, and I mean like physically harmful. And
Wow.
I just went to my, I'm not going to tell you how many years reunion, but it's more than 20.
Getting up there, Darren.
It's a lot of a lot of years reunion, and
Right.
no, in all seriousness, it was our 30-year high school reunion, and he was there, and he was so different. I mean, he felt bad. 30 years later, he couldn't look at me or talk to me until I went up to him, because I could see he felt so bad. He never said anything, but I could see it in his eyes. And I remember when I walked up to him, I said, and his name happened to also be Darren. So I said, "Hey, Darren," and I shook his hand and I gave him a hug. He almost broke down in tears. Because he really was bad to me in high school. But I think you're right. I think that was all rooted in probably some pain in his life and distress and fear that's going on in his life. So, for me though, all that said, music was the escape. Anytime I was doing music, everything was great. And so I'm so thankful that I had that, and that I still do. It helps keep me sane.
Right. Darren, I was my interview right before you was Dave Koz, and he just went into little detail about himself and how he was bullied. I mean, and it was there's different kinds of bullying, that people go through. There's verbal bullying, there's physical bullying. There's one of the reasons why why bullying is getting worse today is because of the cyberbullying.
Sure.
And then you have social bullying. But anyway, he was telling me this story. He would be walking down the hallway, and he would actually get cold cocked and knocked right out. So when you were bullied, can you? Well, first of all, isn't it amazing how, even though how many years it's been, we still remember getting bullied?
Sure.
I mean, yeah, and it just does something to us. But I think so many of us we can use that as a crutch, or we can use it to help other people that are getting bullied. One of my questions is that statistics show that 85% of all bullying, there's no intervention. And Darren, when I first heard this, I thought for sure it was, obviously the teachers aren't intervening, or the administration, or the parents, bullies' parents. But what's happening is that it's the kids that are getting bullied aren't letting the teachers know, aren't letting the parents know.
Right.
So, in that being said, when you were going through this stress and worry of being bullied, did your parents know anything about it at all?
They did. Or in grade school, we had told my folks, and they had actually called the police. We had a group of kids that every day after school would, literally pounce on us and beat on us, and my dad called the police department and said, "Hey, what can I do?" And the police department said, "Well, really, there's no weapons involved. There's not a whole lot you can do." And I remember, I remember my dad a couple times, coming. He was kind of observing from a distance, and a couple times stepping in and saying, letting these kids know, "Hey, you may be bigger than my son, but there's someone bigger than you, and you ought not to be doing this." And that helped a little bit, but it doesn't stop kids from being kids. And I think the problem is parenting. The problem is bad parenting, irresponsible parenting, absentee parenting, lack of discipline, the things that really are completely ripping our society apart right now. If we would get back to some of the basics of ethics and morals and good parenting, I think a lot of these problems would be solved. But you probably know this, dealing with bullying, that oftentimes the reason the kids are bullies is because their parents are bullies. When my dad, when my dad met with these kids' parents, it became very clear to my dad, okay, this kid is just a chip off the old block. His father was the exact same. In fact, his father wanted to go to blows with my dad. And my dad was like, "No, I'm not going to fight. I'm an adult. This is stupid." But it's it's the way this mindset that had been ingrained. When I was in high school, it was rocks every day between the main part of the school and the wood shop. When I would go to wood shop, it was rocks thrown at my head, and I don't mean pebbles. I mean rocks, the size of your fist or bigger, being thrown at my head. And
Jeez, man.
And of course, in an inconspicuous spot that no one was there to see, and so there's, I think, there's a lot of turmoil in our country right now, and people are talking about safety and guns, and I think there's a lot of similar roots, guns and bullying, and I'm not going to get into my specific standpoint on that, other than to say this, that people, there's issues in people's hearts right now. I mean, we're talking about just deep-rooted issues in people's hearts that are of just ugliness. It's bad.
Well, I think I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, since this is my show, I think the politics that are going on with the media, with Trump, with everything, it's just Trump is he has what can I say? He has bullyish characteristics, I think. You know what I mean? And it's just, and people are seeing this, and it's just calling a straight division.
But David, no, and actually, this pertains to what I was saying. I think the thing is, and it's easy for us to look at a figure that's kind of at the head of our society and say, okay, that person's messed up. Look at what he just said. Look at what he just did. But and I think by and large, I think there's, I'm not going to argue with that. But here's the problem, is that it's so much bigger than one person. This is really the way I see it. What we're seeing at the top right now is a reflection of a big part of our society. So it's like a mirror being shown back into our faces, and it's easy for us to say, I could go down the list and tell you every single thing that I disagree with our president. I could do that, but it would probably be more responsible for me to look in the mirror and say, okay, Darren, are any of those traits being reflected in my life? Is there any of those things in my life? It's easy for me to say I don't agree with someone else, but am I spending my time dissing someone else, or am I spending my time reforming myself so that I don't reflect these same things, and so that I can actually, I think this notion of light countering darkness, right countering wrong, there's no better place for that to happen than in our own lives. So, the political thing, we could have a 4-hour discussion about that, and there's so many awful things going on. But what I know is that when I wake up every single day, I can make a choice to make a difference in this world. So, for some people, I think that means hopping on social media and talking. And I'm not going to downplay that. In my life, I've always, I was always raised on the principles of, practice what you preach, let your actions speak louder than your words. And so it's pointless to talk about it if I'm not practicing it in my own life. And so I think that's really the root for me, is making sure that I get up every day and make a difference in my interactions with others, with my family, with other people, with clients, with people in the music industry, and to make sure that I'm not reflecting these ugly qualities to the world.
We have about 2 minutes left, and I want to share this with you and see what your input is, or what kind of advice that you can give the kids. School's starting within 2 or 3 weeks across the country, and they say last year, they say that there was between 175,000 to 200,000 kids that don't go to school each day because they're afraid of being bullied. What's amazing is that from January 2018 to the end of the school year, which was the same year I think that the Parkland shooting took place, there was an additional, that which is like a 5 or 6 month period, there was additional 100 school shootings across the country that we had no idea. So a lot of kids are right now at this time are starting to worry. if they're going to be bullied, they're going from elementary school to middle school, from middle school to high school, worrying about if they're going to fit in, if people are going to like them. What advice can you give these kids? You being bullied, what kind of advice can you give these kids just to get them motivated to, just to persevere through their whole bullying history that they've gone through?
I think we can either live in the light or we can die in the darkness. And so I'd rather personally live with the risk of, live a productive, active life. And, when it's my time, as opposed to hiding and not living life because of other people. And I think that's the same grit you need in the music industry. I think it's the same grit you need at work. When you get older and things aren't going the way you expected, you have to keep showing up. Show up. In hiding, in staying in the darkness, you are even perhaps lending to the problem. So
wow.
I think
nice.
There's a faith component to that, okay? Would I rather be the bully and live to be 99, or am I the guy that's willing to stand up for right? And if that causes my life to be cut short someday, am I going to hem and haw over that? I'd rather be the person that lives a well-intentioned life. I'd rather be the person that lives the meaningful life. And I'll let God deal with, the end of my days. The Bible says my days are numbered by Him. So, I can try and control that, or I can let go and just live a life and, share love and try to live a life of purpose.
Awesome. Well, that's about all we have for the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. We thank you, or thanks Darren for spending some time with us.
My pleasure.
Also, I want to thank all the sponsors for supporting the Bully Resistance Show. Also, I want to encourage all the listeners. You can go to my website at www.davebond.org and subscribe to the Bully Resistance Show. So until next time, thanks for listening.